You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mamas. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Mama Work It podcast. I am so excited today to introduce you to our guest, Giana Vasconcellos. Giana is an MPH, childbirth educator, and doula. Her goal is to educate families on becoming the leaders in their own care through pregnancy, birth, and parenthood. Giana also focuses on creating awareness around improving quality maternal health access by promoting the midwifery care model, history relevance, and teaching mothers to expect and demand better. If you are pregnant, thinking of becoming pregnant, or just have a genuine interest in hearing more about how to make the birth experience better, you are in the right place today. Giana, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited. I was so excited when I saw your message to invite me.
Yay! Okay, me too. I'm excited for this conversation. So first and foremost, tell us a little more about you, your journey, how you got started in this space as a childbirth educator and doula.
Sure. So, it's kind of a long 2013. I finished my MPH and my master's in public health. And what I decided to concentrate on was maternal child health. And it was a lot of research, lots of literature review, lots of peer review, all the articles and journals and looking at data and all of that. So I started to realize, my goodness, for such a developed country, we've got the worst maternal health outcomes. And it's very disappointing. It's very eye-opening. And at that point, I hadn't had children yet. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to be on the research side, how do I help make things better? I don't want to just look at numbers. I see all of the problems all of the time. How can we bridge the gap between knowing the information and knowing the problems that we have and the challenges that we have to overcome? How do we get to the other side of finding solutions? So fast forward through my first baby, did lots of research there, had a hospital induction with him, 10 days overdue. Then fast forward 5 years, I had a home birth during 2020, a pandemic baby, as everybody likes to call them. So it's just been a myriad of different experiences, lots of revelations in pieces of information that I've gathered along the way and people that I've met along the way that caused me to start questioning things and questioning the system and how it was set up and the way it operates today. And I just decided that now I know what the information is. How do I help parents become more equipped to make better decisions? This shouldn't be a situation where we're pregnant. We see the easiest doctor, that's the first doctor that's on our insurance list in our network. We do exactly everything that they tell us to do. We have no active care, no active participation in our care, and our outcomes are so poor. So I went and studied childbirth education specifically to teach these classes. Learned all of those ins and outs, and also it coupled with a doula program. So I got the doula certification. But still, in these certification programs, you're not seeing a lot of the why behind it. And I'm always asking why. My mom used to say, you ask why all the time, as a kid. And I still apparently ask why. And history has a lot to do with the way that our maternal care system is set up. Birth history, obstetric history in particular, the way that the system was set up and the way that it operates now is very, very broken and very, very flawed. So when I started seeing parents, seeing patients, I teach at the hospital that I used to live by, and I teach privately. A lot of the questions that I was seeing were just based in fear, just fear of not knowing what's going to happen. I'm just going to let them do whatever they need to do type approach. And it made me sad, right? It made me sad that these powerful, strong women have no idea how powerful and strong they are and how much of a physiologic process that this is, yet we doubt our power to perform. And we've handed the power over to someone external in order to tell us what to do because we're so scared. So I want to strip away the fear by providing evidence-based information, history, and all of their options, not just the ones that are mainstream or considered quote unquote normal, all of the options. So then I started practicing as a doula. And now I went from research to teaching, which I still do, but also to attending births to help advocacy in the moment, not just before or just after, but in the moment. So that's how I got here.
Yeah. I love that you said this important thing about fear, because I think fear-based decisions are never like, I don't want to say they never end well, but they're like never the place you want to start when you're thinking about making a decision. And a lot of us find ourselves in situations like that, whether they be childbirth related, whether they be related to, I know I agonized for years about leaving my corporate career to go out on my own, very fear-based there that kept me stuck. Like fear really does mess with you in a lot of ways. And so totally like, guys, they weren't lying in the 80s when they did that, like the more you know slogan, like the more you know, like it really helps you to make the best decision for you. And whether that be alongside what your doctor is recommending or not, like you have to feel good about what that decision is.
100%, because they're going to walk away with whatever recommendation that they've given you. They're going to walk away to the next patient to have a conversation with them, but you're the one left with the decision and the consequences of that decision, be it good or bad, right? So that accountability piece, and like you said, like that fear, making a decision out of fear most often leads to trauma because you're just scared, right? Like you're not trusting the process or the people that you've chosen to be part of this process.
Right. So true. No matter what the outcome, trauma can still live there. So absolutely. All right. So you mentioned you've got 2 kids. From what I know about you and what you said, your childbirth experiences were really different. What changed in that 5-year period? I think they're 5 years apart, right? What changed in that period between having your first baby and having your next baby, with what decisions you made? Because you went from a hospital birth to a home birth.
I think the major thing, the major piece that is relevant here in that decision, the difference in decisions, it was the information that I had gathered in the time that I had my first 2015. I was really just on that path of like, I wasn't afraid. I can't say that I had any fear, but the standard of care as it exists right now was the norm to me. And my mom went to the hospital, and these people that I knew got induced, and this is just kind of what you do if you're overdue. I was 10 days overdue at the time. And I wanted to be induced. I was done because my mom was in town visiting. We were living in another state at the time. And I said, well, I need to have this baby before she goes. And I'm 10 days past due. And even the doctor, he was like, we don't induce just for parents being in town. Sorry. But by the 10-day mark, he was like, all right, let's do it. Because he's like, I can't have you go to 42 weeks, which is a whole other conversation in and of itself. So there was that. I think I was just very unaware of the implications of what an induction comes with. And none of it was explained to me, to be honest. None of the interventions were explained to me ahead of time to make so that I could make an educated decision and do my own risk assessment. Fast forward 5 years later, I'm pregnant all of 2020. And I found out I was pregnant December 2019. And then, as we all know, the world completely shifted. And I feel like it was February, especially for us in California, right? Like it was quite early on. My prenatal appointments, like I think I had maybe two. And it was like one for the confirmation of the pregnancy and all of the blood work. And then the second I had an ultrasound. And then by the third, I was like 21 weeks. I had my anatomy scan. And they called me and they said, you know what, Giana, your baby is measuring like 95% over like what he's supposed to be. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And at this point, I have all of the information, like childbirth education background. Like I've got a pretty good gist of what that entails. Anyway, she goes, yeah, we're going to have to probably induce you at 39 weeks. And we're having this conversation at 20 weeks, 21 weeks pregnant. I'm like, I'm not being induced again. I'm just not. Plus, what are the policies, COVID policies during childbirth? Like okay, if everyone can just go back to like March 2020.
Put yourself in that space, guys, remember.
Yes, like we're in a different headspace now, but if you go back to that point, we don't know very much about this virus, right? We're still very, very extremely careful now. But then we were like, I have no idea what's going on. And I'm asking like, well, do I have to, can my husband come in? Like things are like still very uncertain. And I have friends that work in that hospital I was supposed to deliver in. And they were like, Giana, numbers are just really high here. Parents are leaving the unit positive for COVID. Sometimes babies were separated from the families because somebody was positive and somebody wasn't. And it was just so much uncertainty. Meanwhile, I have a 4-year-old at home who's at home and I'm still working, mind you. So working motherhood with a 4-year-old at home pregnant and stressed about not knowing that this is going to be okay. So I had played with the idea of having a home birth with my first, but I didn't know enough about midwifery care. And I told my husband, I was like, look, we're about to have this baby at home. And my husband's a nurse. I'm like, you're going to deliver. And he's like, he's like, you better find someone.
Is he a labor and delivery nurse?
He is not, girl. He's a psychiatric provider nurse in the hospital. So
okay, a little different,
just a little. And so he was like, find somebody. He's like, find a midwife. He's like, let's do it. And so that's when I just went on this deep dive, not just for midwives, but like, okay, what is the midwifery care model? How do they operate under emergencies at home? What does that look like? And all the while, I'm finding out this information that midwifery care is the care that everyone deserves. It's personal, it's individualized. You can still have access to emergent solutions if you need that, which I had an emergency at home, and it was handled wonderfully. All of this information I didn't know. No one ever told me. And this isn't a common conversation. Like, oh, you can have a midwife. And it's just not something that people talk about as a regular option. So I'm finding all of this and I'm like, okay, yeah, this rocks. Like, we're going to do this. And I found a midwife and she referred me to another one because my due date, she had another client due. And this whole community of midwives in the area that served the area that I lived in were just serving our community, serving the maternal care deserts that don't have access to quality maternity care. And I was just blown away by everything that I was learning. We ended up hiring a midwife. We switched care at 24 weeks, 25 weeks, and I had him at 42 weeks. And
Wow.
that in our bedroom.
So interesting. Okay, so I did not know this was COVID inspired,
Oh,
this home
girl, this
birth.
was COVID inspired. It was inspired also. I mean, COVID was 90% of it. 10%, I was like, okay, I'm going to get to do this because with the first, I had watched this documentary called The Business of Being Born.
Oh, seen it.
And yeah,
Yes.
and I was like, what? And I didn't ask enough questions at the time, but we got here and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going for this because COVID was just like the overarching piece of it.
Yeah, but it led you to discover this resource that you had no idea existed. And is this question, because personally, I've never used a midwife. I've never had this level of support. I had 3 deliveries in hospitals,
Mhm.
C-sections, all 3. My
Mhm.
first pregnancy was a high risk monodi identical twins. So
Mhm.
like that's the route we went, you know. And then we just kind of continued suit with the C-sections. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious, is this a benefit that if you are interested in utilizing, your insurance covers?
It depends on the insurance, and it depends on the midwife that you use or the practice that you visit. So some midwives practice like solo, right? So if I were a midwife, I can go to your home or I could practice at a birth center. It just depends on the midwife and how they run their their care model when it comes to all of the finances. But you can check; they would be considered technically out of network. So when I submitted it, I submitted a super bill to my insurance and they kicked me back a check of 25% of the cost.
Got it. Okay. So there is a financial aspect that is not as it's not as inexpensive, let's say, as going in network with like a more traditional um OBGYN route, correct?
Well, I got charged my bill from my son, my first one in the hospital. I was charged the same amount that I paid for a midwife.
Interesting. Okay.
Because a lot of the things that so if you look at a bill, a hospital bill, after a standard, like let's say a standard vaginal delivery, and then you look at a hospital bill with an OR, right, like a cesarean, and then you don't have a bill like a hospital bill or like a care bill from your midwife, right? Like it's just this is the fee for all your prenatal visits. You can look at an itemized bill of what your insurance is billing. Like a hospital charges you for skin to skin. It's $40 to have skin to skin with your own baby, to hold your own baby on your chest. So, to someone who has great insurance that covers everything, yeah, sweet. You're in a great position to deliver in a hospital. But for someone who doesn't, right? Like if I didn't have access to a great quality insurance, I'm getting a bill of 2,500 minimum that I'm paying out of pocket. So it the financial aspect kind of looks different based on all of those factors.
Understood. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's say you're listening. You just learned you're pregnant. Maybe it's your first baby. Maybe it's your third. What are the first steps moms should take with regards to prepping, not just for the birth, but their own overarching maternal mental health throughout this process?
Oh man. I would easily say take note of your support system, whether it's a partner in your life, your friends, family members, your village, right? What we call it takes a village. Who are those people in your village? That's really important because if you have the right support, it makes any decision and any route that you go a little bit easier. Not everybody has that, but a lot of people do. And it's just a matter of identifying that. So I would say identify your village, or who are the people that are in your corner that are going to support you, right? No matter what. B, if you are working, set boundaries, healthy boundaries. I was working through both of my pregnancies, and it is not easy when you are uncomfortable or you have nausea, and some people have HG, that hyperemesis gravidarum, and they're throwing up like constantly every single day. My cousin has that right now, and she's not able to work, right? So you have all of these things, and we're expected to perform at 100%, like pretending like we're not growing an entire other life inside of our body, but we're still expected to perform at this whatever rate that they've given you in your job. So I would explore starting to set healthy boundaries and just kind of being honest with yourself. And like today, your best is going to look different every single day, right? Maybe today I'm not going to check everything off of my to-do list at work. What can wait? Let's prioritize, right? Like your time management workshop that I took in their Facebook group, that taught me so much about learning to manage that time, because it really is in your control, and we really try to do everything at one time. And if it doesn't look perfect, if our to-do list isn't crossed off, we're upset, and it just throws your whole vibe off. So revisiting, setting those boundaries, and being clear with your employer about what your experience is going to be moving forward. Okay. If you have a very active job where you're on your feet a lot and you need to sit down frequently, you're tired, pregnancy comes with a whole host of physical and mental, sometimes challenges, sometimes not, but they're there. And I think it's important to be transparent with your employer. And a lot of people say, well, we can't discuss, we're not supposed to discuss with you your pregnancy, and you can't even and it's an HR thing to not even discuss your due date basically, or your doctor's appointments, which I did find out from an HR friend. But I'm going to tell you, today is not the day that you're going to see my face on a Zoom meeting. And I definitely did that some parts of 2020 because it just wasn't happening. So it's okay to be transparent with things like that. And I think we shy away because we're so nervous. Oh, I don't want to feel like a bad employee. No, you're fine. You're an honest human being, and it's okay to set boundaries. And so those would be my top ones, to really kind of set a foundation, because you can't plan a birth. You can't plan postpartum if you can't get a hold and navigate your pregnancy and the external factors around your pregnancy properly. So it really starts with those.
Yeah. You need to be in a good headspace to be able to think ahead to those things, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of a birth plan, a lot of people develop them. Are you a fan of birth plans? Do you have tips for moms listening who want to be as prepared as possible, who are thinking about developing one or in the process of that now?
I feel like there's so much. I'm sure you spend enough time on social media, you'll find people who hate absolutely everything and then love absolutely everything. So I'm kind of in the camp in the middle where I do like a birth plan. And the reason I like a birth plan is because it forces the family to visit each of their options. And you can't get through creating a birth plan without doing some heavy research on interventions, your birth space, what's required, what's routine versus required, what's evidence-based but still routine but not required. There's just so many layers within that. So I encourage all of my clients, anyone I talk to, make a birth plan. Maybe it's not going to go the way you want, but at least you have enough informed consent on the front end so that you're not waiting for someone to explain something to you, even though they should be. in the moment. You've already done your research and you already know, okay, what is, if they're asking me to administer Pitocin, I've already got my risk assessment done. I already know what the risks and benefits are. So you kind of have your answer, planned to make that decision. I like it for that reason. I don't like it because sometimes it can be a little bit of a hindrance depending on the perception that the family has about birth. It can be a little bit of a hindrance on being able to, okay, this wasn't happening right now. Let's pivot. We can get caught up on like, well, this was on my birth plan and I said that this, I didn't want this or I wanted this. Sometimes you got to pivot and we'll figure it out, but let's not get stuck on what's supposed to happen and let's move on to, okay, what can we do to move through that? So, you'll hear mixed reviews for a birth plan, but I like them. I do a birth plan workshop where it's pretty detailed. It's pretty gnarly, like with the information that I go over. I give them a template that they can work off of, and a nice, concise birth plan with the proper verbiage can go a long way.
I love that. I think that's so crucial. Like you said, like have the mindset around just like life, right? Like you can plan all you want and then things are going to go differently and that's okay. And if you can be okay with that, that's what's crucial to walk away with. But the educational aspect, like you said, so you're not, in a moment of panic or in a moment of fear or under the influence of maybe like some drugs that you wouldn't normally be under the influence when you're having a baby and having to make decisions maybe in that moment when you don't know the information in advance. So I can appreciate that. I think that's a good way to look at it for sure.
Right. And it's interesting because I'll start the workshop off. Okay, so what do you think a birth plan is? Like most of the time it's everything you don't want to happen. Like you just put everything you don't want to happen. And it's really not, because I don't like to use verbiage in a birth plan that says, I do not want A, I do not want B. Like that's not helpful for staff, right? We want to be clear. Language is everything. We want to be clear. So instead of I don't want or I decline X, I prefer to labor naturally with no medication. I prefer little to no labor augmentation. That brings a little bit more of a concept of, okay, this is how we're working with this patient versus like, okay, we know she doesn't want that. What can we help her, and what can we help her with? What can we offer? Language is everything with those.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you're speaking out, you're manifesting to the universe. You want to manifest what you want, not what you don't want. You don't want a mixed message there.
Absolutely. Be clear.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, on that note, we are going to move over to our lightning round now, where we're going to ask you some random, just for fun kind of questions, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better and more personally.
Okay, I love these.
Okay. Here we go. What is your guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh my goodness, Gossip Girl. How easy was that?
I've never seen it. I know.
Marissa. It's too good.
Okay.
I'm probably going to get judged so hard for that.
No,
but anyway, go on.
no judgment. Judgment-free zone here on the Mama Work It podcast. What if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? What would it be? Calories don't count.
Thai food.
Oh, good choice. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite dish?
I love Penang curry.
Yeah.
It's just the right amount of spice. It's perfect. It's just perfection.
Yeah. Yeah. What is one app you can just not live without?
Ooh, the calendar app.
Yeah. I feel you on that.
I know it's kind of boring. I know that's kind of boring, but everything's color coded. I can invite my husband to events that I have going on and he can just, it just streamlines everybody's life.
Agree. The other day I was like doing something on my calendar and I meant to delete something and I deleted the wrong thing and I downright almost had a nervous breakdown, girl. Because I was like, what did I just delete? I don't even know what it was. My life is over. This is where my brain lives. So I understand how important the calendar app is. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, there's a heavy reliance on there.
Okay. Let's say you could only have one superpower or any superpower. What would it be?
To multiply myself in just have like 4 of me.
Have you seen that movie, like that old 90s movie, Multiplicity?
What is it called?
Where the guy
Ooh,
multiplies
yes.
himself.
Yes, I definitely think I envision that almost on a daily basis. So that would definitely be what I would prefer to have.
Yeah, that's a good one. What book are you reading right now?
I am reading Pushed. I'm reading 2 right now. I'm reading Pushed by Jennifer Block. It's a book about the maternal health care system and interviewing lots and lots of professionals, public health professionals, doctors, history, data, all that good stuff. And also reading Mama Bear Apologetics, which is a good one.
Nice. Okay.
I can't remember the authors' names. I'm sorry. There's 2 of them and I can't remember.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. Last question. What's something most people don't know about you?
Probably there's 2 things. Probably that my ideal style of a home is what my husband would call an old lady living in the early 1900s. Like everything antique, vintage. Like I love that style. Like we walked into some houses with wallpaper on them, like suspect wallpaper that most people would be like, get this off right now. I was like, yes, this is awesome.
It spoke to your soul.
It spoke to my like early 1900s old lady soul. So, and Victorian homes, like I just love that style. So much character, I feel like was and thought was given to the architecture back then. And then the second thing is probably that I'm married to an identical twin.
Yes. I think I did know this about you, but nobody else listening probably knows that. But that's awesome.
Mm-mm.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I don't talk about it often, but yeah, I'm married to identical twins. They look, I can tell the difference, but most people cannot.
As a mom of identical twins, I find this very fascinating. Like one
Yeah,
day
right?
I may have a daughter-in-law like you, and we can have these kind of conversations. It'll be fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, a lot of people, the kids know the difference. Um, my oldest couldn't tell until he was about like almost 4.
Wow. Yeah, it's got to be a
But
trip for kids when they see identical
I
twins.
think it
Yeah.
I think it is. The baby, he's still like figuring it out. Like he'll look at them like for a second and then he'll like go to one and then he'll go to like like he's still figuring it out. But I think he actually could tell the difference a little bit earlier on than my oldest.
That's awesome. All right, Giana. Well, before we wrap up, please tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more about you, where they can get even more wisdom that you have to share on all of these amazing birth practices and childbirth education.
Okay, so all the platforms, right? Okay, so Instagram is at simply GNV Wellness. And then my website is giananataliav.com. GIANANATALIAV.com. And that's just kind of obviously Instagram, I share all of the like educational graphics and I do reels, which are super fun. And then I share a lot of my like personal life on stories and information as I think of it on stories. With my website, that's kind of the hub for everything. So like if you want like a Q&A session with me, or like you just want a birth plan session with me for an hour, like I have so many different pieces of support that are accessible to anyone under any budget. And that's really, really important to me, is that everyone has access to this type of care. So the website has everything. And then Instagram has like all of your like snippets and stuff.
And all virtual based, right? So even somebody listening on the other side of the country could schedule one of those birth plan Zoom calls with you.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Love it.
Yeah, most of my clients have not been in the same state, except for my birth clients that I've attended their births. They were all in the same state.
Yeah, that might be a little more challenging on Zoom.
A little
bit.
Yeah.
All right, Giana, thank you so much for being here.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.